Hi everybody, Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free, exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING, get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator, exclusively on DRF Bets.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at one of 10 starter stakes races on Saturday at Aqueduct. This is race 9, the Caixa Eletronica Stakes, going 7 furlongs. Now, on Saturday at Aqueduct, as I said, they are running 10 of these starter stakes races. They're basically starter allowance races, run as stakes races, each with different conditions. For this one, there's an $80,000 purse, but the conditions are that horses can run in this race if they have raced for a claiming tag of $40,000 or less at some time during the 2021 or 2022 season. So we've got 8 horses signed on for this race that fit these conditions. Let's throw up the field for this race. And this is one of the more competitive starter stakes races of the day on Saturday at Aqueduct. As you can see from the morning line that I said, it's a pretty wide open race. I'll be interested to see how the public approaches this one. Had a tough time deciding on the morning line favorite, though ultimately landed on it potentially being the number 3 Answer In, who I pegged as the lukewarm favorite at 3-1, just a half a point lower than the number 2 Zoomer, a horse who's coming off a couple of victories in his last 2 starts. He's 7-2, but plenty of other horses that I listed at single digits on the morning line, like Prince James, More Grateful, Repo Rocks, a horse that's dropping out of some graded stakes events into this starter stakes race, and also the number 7 Whistling Birds, another horse who's coming off a last out victory. A lot of these horses are in pretty good form right now. A lot of them have really advanced from a form standpoint since they last raced for the $40,000 tag that was required of them to be eligible for this race. So it's a pretty high quality affair, probably the best racing action that we'll see take place on this Saturday card at Aqueduct. Before we move on to the main contenders, let's take a look at the pace projector for this race. And not a fast pace predicted. There's no characterization of it favoring one running style over another, but we do have a couple of front runners that should vie for the lead in this race in the number 4 More Grateful and the number 6 Mexican Wonder Boy. The number 7 Whistling Birds, another horse who has shown some tactical speed in recent races, actually coming off a couple of gate-to-wire victories, so it wouldn't be a surprise if his jockey, Eric Cancel, decides to get aggressive as well. But it does seem like, from a pace figure standpoint, the number 4 More Grateful and the number 6 Mexican Wonder Boy are a little bit quicker in the early stages. With regard to Mexican Wonder Boy, I think the thing that'll be interesting to watch with him is if he's able to get out of the gate, because he's a horse that has had some trouble at the start in his last couple of starts. He's broken slowly, so that could be to his detriment just as he turns back in distance if he shows that tendency once again. Horses that'll be looking to close from the back of the pack are among the favorites, the number 2 Zoomer and the number 3 Answer In, both horses who would not mind some pace to close into in this race. So let's start by taking a look at those 2 favorites, and I'll lead off with Zoomer, who's coming off a victory last time out when he won on February 26th at Aqueduct. Let's take a look at the replay of that race, and that's Zoomer in the pink silks coming into the stretch in about 4th or 5th place between horses, and he's going to make a late charge in between rivals to just get up to win as they come onto the wire. He's going to get his head in front just in the last couple of strides or so. Now, this was a race that featured a pretty fast pace going the 1 mile distance, and it kind of falls apart in the late stages. The 2 horses that are fading that had the lead at mid-stretch really did all the dirty work going after a runoff leader in the early stages, so they had a right to get run down, and Zoomer was just sitting in the perfect spot to pick them up in deep stretch. Though give credit to Zoomer for maintaining the solid form that he's been in recent starts, really for this entire winter season at Aqueduct. He earned a 111 time form US speed figure, which I believe is the best number that he's posted in his career now in start number 33 for him. He's a horse that loves to win races. He's shown that tendency recently, taking his last 2 starts in a row. He did beat a bias when he won on January 23rd, 2 back, though only did so against 4 rivals, not as tough a field as the one that he's going to face here. He did face off against some horses, though, that he'll meet again in the starting gate on Saturday, 3 back, when he was second behind Answer In and beat More Grateful in a claiming $40,000 $2 race, one that's proven to be a key race that we're going to discuss a little bit more later on in my preview of this Caixa Eletronica. My one big concern, though, with Zoomer is that he's racing first off the claim for trainer Linda Rice. And let's take a look at a DRF formulator fact with regard to Zoomer and trainer Linda Rice. It's been kind of a cold winter overall for Linda Rice's barn. She has not had a whole lot of success in general, typically not her typical rate of win for this entire winter, and particularly with horses racing first off the claim. This is over the past 3 months, so this entire winter meet at Aqueduct, she started 24 horses off the claim, just one victory, and that horse was a pretty short price, which accounts for that paltry ROI of just 17 cents on a $2 win wager. So not great stats for Linda Rice. Maybe she turns things around here with Zoomer, who she did pay $62,500 for when he won his last race. So he'll make his first start off the claim for her in this Caixa Electronica on Saturday. One of his main rivals, though, could be the number 3 Answer In. Let's take a look at his race, 2 back, actually. This is that key race that I was alluding to, that $40,000 claimer in which Answer In defeated Zoomer, who we just talked about, as well as More Grateful, who's also going to be in this race. Now, that is Answer In between horses in those maroon silks, who's just getting up for the victory here. To his inside, that horse that he's passing is More Grateful. And on the outside, the horse in the black silks, that is Zoomer, who we just talked about. He's going to make a late run to just miss going the 6 furlong distance on this day. Answer In, he got the job done in this race. He was the even money favorite here, so he did what he was supposed to do in a victory, getting a 108 time from US Speed Figure. And give this horse credit for coming back in a tougher spot last time to earn a 112 time from US Speed Figure when he stepped up in company to face a tougher optional claiming field. Did lose that race going off at 5-2 odds to a horse Big Engine, who got a great trip that day. Big Engine just kind of snuck up the rail, whereas Answer In was forced to go wider into the stretch. I still thought that Answer In had every chance to win that race and just kind of hung a little bit in the late stages. So from a visual standpoint, I wasn't as impressed with Answer In's last race. And furthermore, he's going to have to handle this stretch out in distance to 7 furlongs. He's a horse that tends to get somewhat keen early in his races, especially when he's put behind horses in the early going. So I'll be interested to see if he settles, if the pace does not develop up front the way it did going 6 furlongs, the shorter distance. So I'm a little bit skeptical of Answer In among the contenders. They're so evenly matched, you have to split hairs a little bit. And if Answer In is indeed going to be the favorite in this race, I kind of wanted to look for some bigger prices. Maybe one of those could be the number 1 Prince James. Let's take a look at his last race when he finished second in an optional claiming nominators of 2 other than on February 27th at Aqueduct. Now, this was his first start off the claim for the Rob Atras barn. He was moving way up in class coming out of a condition claiming race that he had won by over 11 lengths, but he was stepping up to meet a much tougher field in this optional claiming affair. And I thought he ran pretty well despite losing by just 3/4 of a length. That horse that's running him down on the outside, Amundsen, is a pretty good New York bred who's been competitive against Stakes Company in the past, and Prince James fights onto the wire to just lose by less than a length that day. Take a look at the time form US pace figures for early in that race. They went pretty quickly in the opening stages, and Prince James made an early move into contention around the far turn to get himself into that position to challenge the early leader Fast Getaway. He put that runner away, really did the best of those that contested the pace, but just found himself vulnerable to the late charge of Amundsen, who had everything go his way, closing into that very swift pace on the front end. Feels like Prince James is heading in the right direction now since getting into the Rob Atras barn, and I like this stretch out to 7 furlongs for him. He was going to 6 last time, but it feels like that might be on the short side for a horse that, prior to trying that distance last time, had done most of his racing, especially for his prior connections, going a mile, distances that were much farther than that. So I think 7 furlongs could hit him right between the eyes. He tried this distance once before last summer at Colonial Downs, had a little bit of a trip, probably should have won that day. So I feel like he's a horse that might be sitting on a good effort and could work out the right trip from just off the pace. Another horse that could work out a similar stalking trip is the number 5 Repo Rocks. This is a horse who's actually dropping in class, coming out of a couple graded stakes races. He actually picked up some minor awards in those, finishing second 2-back in the Toboggan Stakes and then third last time out in the Tom Fool Stakes. That said, while he was coming out of some tougher races on the surface of things, he didn't necessarily earn speed figures that say that this is a big drop in class, because the horses that he's running against here have earned comparable numbers to the ones that he did in those graded stakes races the last couple of times. Those also weren't the biggest fields. He was just facing 4 rivals in each of those races, so maybe we shouldn't be giving him too much credit for picking up those minor awards. So I'm a little bit skeptical of Repo Rocks, especially since he's been a horse that's in the past has had trouble getting out of the starting gate, and he's shown that tendency, especially in his last couple of races. It seemed like he had gotten over it earlier in the winter, but his last couple of races he's broken very slowly once again. So you don't like to see those bad habits coming out on a horse later in their careers. Another horse that could be somewhat interesting here is the number 7 Whistling Birds. And I say interesting mostly with regard to the pace situation, because he does have early speed. Let's take a look at Whistling Bird's last victory when he won on February 20th. This was a New York bred optional claiming affair. He was in for the $45,000 tag this day, and he got right to the front end under a hustling ride from Eric Cancel, though helped a little bit by a lack of aggression on his main rival, More Grateful. I'll talk about that a little bit in just a second, but Whistling Birds handled the 7 furlong distance on this day. Actually, his last 2 victories have come going 7 furlongs, so he clearly is set up to handle this trip that he's going to face in the Caixa Eletronica on Saturday. The big question for Whistling Birds is, how is he going to react to a more contested pace, as there are other horses who want to be on the early lead along with him? And also, how is he going to fare against the tougher field? Because while he did beat one rival that he has in common with him today, in a general sense, he's really moving up the class ladder. He faced a much weaker field too back at the $25,000 level, and he really had the best of it last time, because that track that he ran over on February 20th was a little bit speed favoring, probably favored horses that were down towards the inside, so he got the perfect trip that day. I wonder if he can repeat that kind of effort at what could be a shorter price than the 10-1 that he was when he won last time. The one more horse that I do want to discuss in this race is the number 4, More Grateful, who comes out of that same common race with Whistling Birds. And you can see he settled for 3rd that day as the 2-1 favorite, fading behind Whistling Birds. But I don't want to be too hard on More Grateful for losing that race, because I think he did not get the best ride. I'm not sure if it was Manny Franco or the connections that decided to rate this horse, but he was really not ridden aggressively coming out of the starting gate. And he looked on paper like a horse that did have the speed to be in front of Whistling Birds early. They just decided not to use it as they wrangled him off the pace, and that proved to be the wrong move given the way the race shook out in the front end. Whistling Birds got loose, and the pace wasn't that fast. Now, More Grateful did run a big speed figure in his prior start. You see that 119 final time rating he got that was actually knocked down a little bit to a 115 time formula speed figure because of a slightly slow pace. But that number would make him pretty tough if he repeats that 2-back effort. The one caveat to that is January 1st was a day that seemed to be favoring horses that had early speed, so More Grateful was really with the track. But keep in mind, I'm going to bring up again that December 17th $40,000 claiming race that he exited along with Answerin and Zoomer. Now, he did finish 3rd that day behind those 2 runners, but I'd argue that More Grateful ran just as well, if not better, than Answerin and Zoomer in that race, because he was setting what was an honest pace before getting run down by those 2. More Grateful, he's got the speed to be in front here, and depending on whether or not his main rival from the pace standpoint, Mexican Wonder Boy, breaks out of the gate cleanly, More Grateful could find himself with an early advantage. He's got to handle the 7 furlongs, which he didn't quite do last time, but I think he could get dismissed at a bit of a price here as he goes first off the claim for trainer Michelle Giangulio, so I don't want to totally dismiss More Grateful. I definitely would have him in the mix. And speaking of being in the mix, let's throw out my picks for this race. I did put the number 1, Prince James, on top, just trying to play around with the prices, looking for a horse that I think is going to be fair enough value. I pegged Prince James at 4-1 on the morning line. I'd want to price somewhere around that, but I just like the improvement that he showed last time out for Rod Battris, the way he fought onto the wire, and I think he's going to work out the right kind of trip going the 7 furlong distance. So I put Prince James on top. I've got that horse that I said was interested, the number 4, More Grateful, in there in the second slot. He's 5-1 on my morning line, and I could frankly see him drifting up from that a little bit, because it does feel like the number 2, Zoomer, and the number 3, Answerin, are both horses that have to take money in this race. I'm not against either of them, but I put them a little farther down my picks just because I feel like this might be the kind of race where you want to search for fair value, because this field just seems to be so evenly matched in the Caixa Eletronica Stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.